The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss, and Ambassador Jiho Kim stepped into the most important place in the galaxy. Nexus Prime stretched before him like a crystal city floating in space. Through the massive windows he could see stars scattered across the darkness like diamonds on black cloth. Jiho had never seen anything so beautiful or so terrifying. He wore his best diplomatic uniform, dark blue with gold trim that marked him as Earth's representative. The fabric felt strange against his skin. Back home he would have worn combat gear or simple clothes, but today he needed to look like a diplomat, not a soldier. The hallways of Nexus Prime buzzed with activity. Hundreds of beings from dozens of worlds walked these corridors every day. Jiho saw creatures he had only read about in reports. Some walked on two legs like humans. Others crawled on many legs or floated in the air. Their skin came in every color he could imagine, and some he could not. A tall, thin being with silver skin glided past him. Its eyes were large and dark, and it moved without making any sound. Jiho recognized it as a Xanthari, one of the scholar races. They had been among the first to suggest that humans might be worthy of joining the galactic community. Further down the hall, a group of short, furry creatures chattered in high voices. Their ears twitched as they talked, and their tails swished behind them. These were the Kikari traders, famous throughout the galaxy for their business skills and friendly nature. But not everyone looked friendly. Jiho felt eyes watching him from every direction. Some aliens stared with curiosity, like they were looking at a strange new animal. Others showed clear distrust. A few even looked at him with what could only be called disgust. He understood why. Humans were new to this game. For thousands of years, these species had built their civilization among the stars while humans still fought each other with sticks and stones. To them, Earth was a baby world, and its people were children pretending to be adults. Jiho kept walking, his steps steady and sure. He had been chosen for this mission because he could stay calm under pressure. The leaders of Earth needed someone who would not break when faced with beings who could destroy entire planets. The council chamber lay ahead, its doors towering above him like the entrance to a temple. Made from some kind of black stone that seemed to absorb light, they were covered with symbols from every member species of the Galactic Confederation. Soon, if things went well, human symbols would join them. As Jiho approached the doors, a shadow fell across his path. Commander Vex of the Thrakari Empire stood directly in front of him, blocking the way forward. The alien warrior was massive, standing nearly 8 feet tall. His skin looked like green leather stretched over powerful muscles. Sharp teeth showed when he spoke, and his yellow eyes glowed with intelligence and anger. The Thrakari were warriors, first and always. Their empire had conquered 17 star systems through pure military might. Other species feared them, respected them, or both. They had ruled the military affairs of the galaxy for over 300 years. Vex wore his dress uniform, black metal plates that caught the light like mirrors. Weapons hung from his belt, ceremonial but still deadly. Everything about him screamed danger and power. "So," Vex said, his voice deep and rough like grinding stone. The humans finally crawl out of their little mud ball to beg for scraps from their betters. Other aliens in the hallway stopped to watch. Some pretended to be busy with their own affairs, but Jiho could feel their attention like heat from a fire. This was a test, he realized, not just from Vex, but from everyone present. They wanted to see how the human would react to this insult. Jiho looked up at the towering alien commander. He could have tried to step around Vex, but that would look weak. He could have responded with anger, but that would make him seem uncontrolled. Instead, he did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He smiled. It was not a big smile, not the kind that showed teeth or suggested aggression. It was gentle and warm, the kind of smile a teacher might give a student who had just asked an interesting question. It reached his eyes and made them crinkle slightly at the corners. "Commander Vex," Jiho said, his voice calm and polite. "It is an honor to meet such a distinguished warrior. I have read many reports about your victories. Your reputation extends even to our small world." The response clearly was not what Vex expected. The Thrakari commander's eyes narrowed and his hand moved slightly toward one of his weapons. A Around them, the watching aliens murmured to each other in a dozen different languages. "You mock me, human," Vex growled. "Not at all," Jiho replied, still smiling that same gentle smile. "I spoke only truth. May I pass? The council awaits, and I would not want to keep such important beings waiting." For a long moment, Vex did not move. His yellow eyes studied Jiho's face as if trying to solve a puzzle. The human showed no fear, no anger, no shame. Just that strange, calm smile and patient eyes. Finally, Vex stepped aside, but only barely. Jiho had to brush against the alien's armored shoulder as he passed. The touch was brief, but it let Jiho feel the incredible strength in that massive frame. Vex could have crushed him without effort. "This is not over, little human," Vex whispered as Jiho walked past. "I hope not," Jiho replied softly, still smiling. "I look forward to learning more about your culture." The words followed Jiho as he walked toward the council chamber doors. Behind him, he could hear Vex talking with other aliens in harsh, angry tones. The Thrakari commander was not pleased with how their first meeting had gone. Jiho did not turn around to look. Instead, he approached the massive doors, which began to open automatically as he drew near. Light spilled out from the chamber beyond, and he could hear the sound of many voices speaking in many languages. Inside waited representatives from 43 different species, each one powerful enough to decide the fate of entire worlds. They would judge whether humanity deserved a place among the stars or should be sent back to Earth in shame. Ambassador Jiho Kim straightened his shoulders, kept that gentle smile on his face, and walked into the most important room in the galaxy. Behind him, Commander Vex watched with growing confusion and something that might have been the first seeds of concern. The game had begun, and the human was not playing by the rules anyone expected. The council chamber was the largest room Jiho had ever seen. The ceiling stretched high above like the inside of a cathedral, and the walls curved in a perfect circle. 43 seats were arranged in rising rows, each one designed for a different species. Some were simple chairs for humanoid beings, others were pools of water for aquatic races. A few were floating platforms for creatures that lived in gas clouds. At the center of it all stood a single podium where speakers could address the entire assembly. That was where Jiho would soon stand to ask for humanity's greatest wish. As he entered, conversation stopped. Hundreds of eyes turned to look at the human ambassador. Some were curious, some were doubtful, and some were clearly hostile. Jiho felt the weight of their attention, but kept walking with steady steps. His assigned seat was in the lower section, marking Earth as a petitioner rather than a full member. The chair was simple but comfortable, designed for human anatomy. Someone had done their research. To his right sat Ambassador Kalen of the Zenthari. The silver-skinned being nodded politely as Jiho settled into his seat. The Zenthari were known for their love of knowledge and their fair treatment of younger races. "Welcome to Nexus Prime, Ambassador Kim," Kalen said in perfect English. His voice was soft and musical. "We are eager to learn about your species." "Thank you," Jiho replied. "I hope we can prove worthy of your consideration." On his left, a different kind of greeting waited. Commander Vex had taken a seat close enough to loom over the human section. The Thrakari military held 3 seats on the council, more than most species. Their power came from strength, and strength earned respect in galactic politics. Vex stared at Jiho with those burning yellow eyes. He was clearly still puzzled by their encounter in the hallway. The human had not reacted as expected, and that seemed to bother the warrior more than open defiance would have. The council speaker called for order. She was a Dorthak, a species that looked like walking trees with bark-like skin and leaves instead of hair. Her voice carried easily through the vast chamber. "We gathered today to hear the petition of the species called humans from the world they name Earth," she announced. "Ambassador Jiho Kim will present their case for membership in the Galactic Confederation." Jiho rose from his seat and walked to the central podium. The journey felt longer than the walk from the shuttle. Every step echoed in the silent chamber. When he reached the speaking platform, he looked up at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. Honored members of the council, he began, his voice clear and strong. I come before you not as a conqueror or a beggar, but as a representative of a species that wishes to join the community of stars. We offer our knowledge, our friendship, and our commitment to the values that bind your confederation together. He spoke of Earth's achievements in science and art. He told them about human music and literature, about medical advances and technological innovations. He painted a picture of a species that had learned to work together despite their differences. The Tier. Council listened politely, but Jiho could see doubt in many faces. They had heard such speeches before from dozens of species. Words were easy. Proving worthiness was harder. When Jiho finished his formal presentation, the speaker opened the floor for questions and comments. Several representatives asked about human technology and culture. Their questions were respectful but probing, designed to test how much humans really understood about galactic civilization. Jiho answered each question with patience and honesty. When he did not know something, he said so rather than trying to bluff. This seemed to impress some of the council members, though others looked concerned about human limitations. Then Commander Vex stood up. The massive Thrakari warrior did not wait for permission to speak. In their culture, strength gave its own authority. His voice boomed across the chamber like thunder. I have questions for this human, Vex announced, but not about their pretty words or clever inventions. A murmur ran through the assembly. Everyone knew that when a Thrakari commander had questions, they were rarely gentle ones. Speak your questions, Commander, the speaker said. She could not deny him the right, not when Thrakari military might protected many council worlds. Vex turned to face Jiho directly. His yellow eyes blazed with something between anger and curiosity. You speak of joining our community, human, but what do you know of strength? What do you know of sacrifice? Have your people ever faced true danger? Have you ever been tested by fire and found worthy? The questions hung in the air like smoke from a battlefield. Other council members leaned forward in their seats. This was the heart of the matter, they knew. The galaxy was not a peaceful place. Species that could not defend themselves did not survive long among the stars. Jiho looked up at the towering alien warrior. Again, that gentle smile appeared on his face. We have known conflict, Commander Vex, he said calmly. But we have also learned that true strength sometimes means choosing not to fight. Vex's laugh was harsh and mocking. Pretty words from a pretty diplomat, but words do not stop plasma bolts or kinetic rounds. Words do not hold ground when enemies attack your worlds. The Thrakari commander stepped down from his platform, moving closer to the central podium. His presence filled the space like a storm cloud. You humans think you can smile your way into our community. You think politeness and clever speeches make you worthy to stand among warriors and conquerors, but you have never been tested. You are soft creatures from a soft world, and you will break when the galaxy shows you its teeth. Gasps and whispers filled the chamber. No one had expected such a direct attack on the petitioning species. Some council members looked shocked. Others nodded in agreement with the Thrakari's words. Jiho stood quietly at the podium, still wearing that same mysterious smile. He did not look angry or afraid. If anything, he seemed almost amused by Vex's outburst. You doubt our strength, Commander, Jiho said when the chamber grew quiet again. That is your right, but perhaps you judge too quickly based on appearances. Vex's eyes narrowed. Then prove me wrong, human. Show this council what your species is truly made of. The challenge in those words was unmistakable. Around the chamber, representatives from 43 worlds waited to see how the human would respond. Some hoped he would back down and show proper respect for Thrakari power. Others were curious to see if this strange, smiling diplomat had any steel beneath his polite exterior. How would you have me prove this? Jiho asked, his voice still calm and patient. Vex's smile showed all. His sharp teeth, by the ancient right of trial by combat. Single battle between champions, fought according to the old laws. Your best warrior against mine. If you win, your species proves its strength. If you lose... He did not need to finish the sentence. Everyone understood. A loss would mean more than just rejection from the Council. It would mark humanity as weak in the eyes of every species in the galaxy. The chamber fell completely silent. This was not how anyone had expected the hearing to go, but now that the challenge had been issued, it could not be taken back. Thrakari, honor demanded satisfaction, and galactic law recognized their right to test potential members through combat. All eyes turned to the human ambassador standing alone at the center of the vast room. His next words would decide the fate of his entire species. Jiho Kim looked up at Commander Vex, that gentle smile never wavering from his face. "I accept your challenge," he said quietly. The explosion of voices that followed could be heard throughout Nexus Prime. The human quarters on Nexus Prime were small but comfortable. 3 rooms connected by a narrow hallway with basic furniture and a view of the stars through a single window. It was meant for a small diplomatic team, not for preparing for a fight that could decide the fate of an entire species. Jiho sat on the edge of his bed, staring out at the distant stars. His hands were steady, his breathing calm, but his mind was racing. In 12 hours he would face Commander Vex in single combat. The winner would prove the strength of their species. The loser would likely die. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Lieutenant Minho Park entered, carrying a data pad and wearing the worried expression he had worn since the challenge was issued. "Sir, I have been reading everything I can find about Thrakari combat methods," Minho said, sitting in the chair across from Jiho. "The news is not good." Minho was young for a military officer, barely 30 years old. He had been chosen for this mission because of his quick mind and knowledge of alien cultures. Now he looked like he wished he had never left Earth. "Tell me," Jiho said simply. "Thrakari warriors are bred for combat from birth. Their homeworld has 3 times Earth's gravity, so they are incredibly strong. They train with weapons from the age of 5. Commander Vex has never lost a formal challenge. He has killed 17 opponents in ritual combat." Jiho nodded slowly. He had expected as much. The Thrakari did not build their reputation on empty boasting. "There is more," Minho continued, his voice getting quieter. "The combat is fought with traditional weapons only. No guns, no advanced technology. Just blades and strength and skill. Sir, with respect, you are a diplomat. You have some military training, but nothing like what Vex has faced." Before Jiho could respond, another knock came at the door. This time it was Captain Sunmi Lee, Earth's military attaché. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and graying hair, a veteran of conflicts that most people preferred to forget. "Ambassador, we need to talk," she said, closing the door behind her. Captain Lee carried a sealed case that required her biometric signature to open. Inside were data files marked with the highest security classifications Earth possessed. "What you are about to see cannot leave this room," she said, looking at both men seriously. "These files contain information about human military history that was deliberately kept out of our application to the Galactic Council." She activated a holographic display that filled the center of the small room. Images appeared showing battles, soldiers and weapons spanning thousands of years of human history. "The Council thinks we are a young, peaceful species because that is what we wanted them to think," Captain Lee explained. "Our application emphasized our arts, sciences, and diplomatic achievements. We did not tell them about the other side of human nature." The images showed ancient warriors with bronze swords, medieval knights in steel armor, soldiers from the world wars, and finally troops from conflicts that had happened in space around Mars and the asteroid belt. "Every species in the galaxy has a story of conflict," Captain Lee continued. "But most of them reached the stars before they learned to truly fight. They conquered space while they were still relatively peaceful. Humans are different. We perfected the art of war before we ever left our homeworld." Minho stared at the images with wide eyes. He knew human history, but seeing it presented this way made it feel different, more intense, more frightening. "Look at this," Captain Lee said, highlighting specific battles. "The Battle of Marathon, where 300 Spartans held off an army of thousands. The trenches of World War I, where soldiers lived in hell for years without breaking. The Siege of Stalingrad, where humans fought for every building, every room, every step. She paused the display on an image of soldiers fighting in the low gravity of an asteroid mining station. And then there were the colonial wars. When humans spread to Mars and the outer planets, we did not go in peace. We went as conquerors and settlers, and we fought each other for every piece of rock worth claiming. Jiho had been silent through the presentation, but now he spoke. You want to tell them who we really are? No, Captain Lee said firmly. I want to remind you who you really are. She opened another file, and Jiho's military record appeared in the air between them. Minho gasped as he read the details he had never been allowed to see. Major Jiho Kim, Special Operations Command. Veteran of the Martian Independence War. Specialist in unconventional warfare and psychological operations. 43 combat missions. 0 failures. You were not chosen for this mission because you are a good diplomat, Captain Lee said quietly. You were chosen because you are the perfect combination of warrior and peacemaker. Someone who could fight if necessary but would choose peace when possible. She closed the files and looked directly at Jiho. Commander Vex thinks he is facing a soft civilian who will break under pressure. He has no idea what humans are truly capable of when pushed to their limits. The room fell silent as the 3 humans considered what this meant. Outside their window, the stars continued their eternal dance, uncaring about the small drama playing out on the space station. Dr. Hyunwoo Choi arrived an hour later, carrying his own set of files about Thrakari biology and psychology. The mission's xenobiologist was a quiet man who preferred studying alien cultures to interacting with them, but his knowledge was encyclopedic. I have been analyzing everything we know about Thrakari combat psychology, he said, spreading data across the table. They are used to opponents who fight like them, with brute force and direct aggression. They expect their enemies to meet strength with strength. He pulled up anatomical diagrams of Thrakari physiology. Their advantages are obvious. Superior strength, speed, and reach. Natural weapons in their claws and teeth. Armor like skin that can stop most bladed weapons. And their weaknesses? Jiho asked. Pride, Dr. Choi said immediately. They have been dominant for so long that they cannot imagine losing to a lesser species. They also rely heavily on intimidation. Most of their opponents surrender before the fight truly begins. He showed psychological profiles of previous Thrakari opponents. Look at these combat records. Most fights end within the first few minutes, either with the opponent's death or their complete psychological collapse. Thrakari warriors are trained to end fights quickly through overwhelming force. What does that mean for tomorrow? Captain Lee asked. Dr. Choi looked at Jiho thoughtfully. It means that if you can survive the initial assault, if you can show that you will not break easily, Commander Vex will be fighting in unfamiliar territory. He has never faced an opponent who could match his psychological warfare. As the evening wore on, the team continued their planning. They studied Thrakari fighting techniques, analyzed Vex's previous combat recordings, and discussed strategies that might give a human fighter a chance against such a formidable opponent. But through it all, Jiho remained calm. He asked questions, listened to advice, and absorbed information with the patience of a scholar and the focus of a warrior. When the others finally left to get some rest, Jiho returned to his position by the window. Tomorrow would bring the greatest test of his life and possibly the most important combat in human history. He thought about his training, his experiences, and the long path that had brought him to this moment. He was not the same man who had entered politics after leaving the military. The diplomat and the warrior had become one person, and tomorrow that person would be tested against one of the galaxy's greatest champions. Outside, the stars continued to shine, waiting to see which species would prove itself worthy of walking among them. Jiho Kim smiled that same gentle smile and began to prepare for war. The ancient arena on Nexus Prime had not been used for combat in over 50 years. Built by the first species to join the Galactic Confederation, it was a circular pit carved from black stone, with seats rising in tiers around its edge. Today, those seats were filled with beings from across the galaxy, all come to witness a trial by combat that would decide humanity's fate. Jiho stood in the preparation chamber beneath the arena floor. The room was simple, containing only a bench, a water dispenser, and a rack of traditional weapons approved for ritual combat. He had chosen a simple steel sword, well-balanced and familiar to his hands from years of training. Through the thick walls, he could hear the crowd above, thousands of voices speaking in dozens of languages, all waiting to see if the human diplomat would survive the first few minutes against Commander Vex. Captain Lee stood beside him, checking his light armor one final time. The rules allowed basic protection, but nothing that would give an unfair advantage. Jiho wore a simple chest plate and arm guards, enough to stop a glancing blow but useless against a direct strike from Thrakari's strength. "Remember what we discussed," she said quietly. "Do not try to match his strength. Use your speed and intelligence. Make him work for every attack." Jiho nodded, still wearing that same calm smile that had puzzled so many aliens over the past few days. His breathing was steady, his hands relaxed. To anyone watching, he looked like a man preparing for a pleasant afternoon walk rather than a fight to the death. The arena doors began to open with a grinding sound that echoed through the preparation chamber. Bright light spilled down from above, along with the roar of the crowd. "It is time," Captain Lee said. Jiho walked up the ramp toward the arena floor. Each step took him closer to the most important fight in human history. Behind him, he could hear Captain Lee whispering a prayer in Korean, words from their grandmother's religion asking for protection and strength. The arena floor was smooth stone covered with a thin layer of sand to absorb blood. The ceiling was open to space, held back by an energy field that let in starlight but kept the air inside. The effect was beautiful and terrifying, like fighting at the bottom of a cosmic well. Commander Vex was already waiting in the center of the arena. The Thrakari warrior looked even more massive in the open space. His armor was traditional battle gear, black metal plates decorated with the symbols of his victories. In his hands, he carried a weapon that looked like a cross between a sword and an axe, with a curved blade that could cut through steel. The crowd fell silent as Jiho entered the arena. He looked small compared to his opponent, almost fragile in his simple armor and basic weapon. More than one spectator wondered if this would be the shortest trial by combat in galactic history. Ambassador Kalen of the Zenthari served as the ritual judge. His silver form stood at the edge of the arena, holding the ceremonial staff that would signal the beginning and end of combat. "Warriors," Kalen called out, his musical voice carrying clearly through the arena. "You fight under the ancient laws. Combat continues until one yields, one falls, or one dies. There is no shame in yielding to save your life." Vex laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the stone walls. "This human will yield before I even draw blood." He called out to the crowd. "Watch how quickly the soft creatures break when faced with real strength." Jiho said nothing. He simply drew his sword and took a ready position, the blade held in a comfortable grip that spoke of long training and real experience. "Begin," Kalen announced, and the trial by combat officially started. Vex attacked immediately, crossing the distance between them in 3 massive strides. His weapon came down in an overhead strike that would have split a normal man in half. The speed of the attack shocked many in the crowd. For such a large being, the Thrakari commander moved like lightning. But Jiho was not there when the blade arrived. He had stepped aside at the last possible moment, the Thrakari weapon missing him by inches. As Vex's strike hit empty air, Jiho's sword flicked out in a quick cut that drew a thin line of green blood across the alien's arm. Vex roared in surprise and pain. No opponent had ever drawn first blood against him. He spun around, bringing his weapon in a horizontal sweep that should have caught the human before he could recover. Again, Jiho was not where the blade expected to find him. He had dropped low, rolling under the swing, and came up behind Vex, with another quick cut that found the gap in the alien's armor at his knee. The crowd began to murmur. This was not going as anyone had expected. Vex's attacks became faster and more vicious. He used his reach and strength to press forward, forcing Jiho to give ground step by step. The Thrakari weapon was a blur of deadly metal, each strike capable of ending the fight instantly, but none of them connected. Jiho moved like water, flowing around each attack by the smallest possible margin. He never tried to block Vex's strikes directly, knowing that his human strength could never match Thrakari power. Instead, he deflected glancing blows and avoided the rest entirely, and with each exchange, he left small cuts on his opponent. Nothing, serious nothing that would slow Vex down significantly, but each tiny wound sent a message. The human could not be intimidated. The human would not break. The human was fighting back. After 5 minutes of combat, Vex began to breathe harder. His homeworld's heavy gravity had given him incredible strength, but it had also made him used to quick victories. Fights that lasted this long were outside his experience. Jiho, meanwhile, seemed to be getting warmer to the task. His movements became more fluid, more confident. He began to anticipate Vex's attacks before they came, reading the alien's body language like a book written in a familiar language. The crowd watched in growing amazement as the small human continued to survive against the Galactic champion. Some began cheering for the underdog. Others placed new bets on how long the fight would last. But in the arena, something more important than entertainment was happening. Vex was beginning to doubt himself for the first time in his life. Every attack that missed, every small cut he received, every moment that the human refused to fall chipped away at the psychological foundation of his confidence. He had been taught that lesser species would crumble before Thrakari might. But this human kept smiling that maddening smile and fighting back. Stand still and die like a warrior. Vex snarled as another strike went wide. I am standing exactly where I choose to stand. Jiho replied calmly, his voice carrying clearly despite his movement. The response enraged Vex beyond reason. He abandoned technique and threw himself into a berserk assault, relying on pure strength and speed to overwhelm his opponent. It was a mistake. Jiho had been waiting for this moment, when anger would override training. As Vex charged forward in a wild attack, the human stepped aside and used the alien's own momentum against him. A perfectly timed trip sent the massive warrior crashing to the arena floor. Before Vex could recover, Jiho's sword was at his throat. The arena fell completely silent. For the first time in galactic history, a Thrakari champion lay defeated at the feet of a supposedly lesser species. The impossible had happened, and everyone who witnessed it knew they were seeing the beginning of a new age. Commander Vex looked up at the human standing over him. That same gentle smile still on Jiho's face despite the sweat and small wounds from their fight. You fought well, Jiho said quietly, offering his hand to help Vex stand, and in that moment, something broke inside the proud Thrakari warrior's mind. The arena remained frozen in absolute silence. Commander Vex, the undefeated champion of the Thrakari Empire, lay on his back with a human sword at his throat. Above them, thousands of beings from across the galaxy stared in shock at what they had just witnessed. Jiho stood over his fallen opponent, breathing steadily despite the intensity of their fight. Small cuts marked his arms and face where Vex's weapon had come close, but he was very much alive. More importantly, he was victorious. The moment stretched on, each second feeling like an hour. Everyone waited to see what would happen next. According to the ancient laws of trial by combat, Jiho had the right to claim his victory in the traditional way. One thrust of his blade would end Commander Vex's life and prove humanity's strength beyond any doubt. But Jiho did not move his sword closer to the alien's throat. Instead, he did something that no one in the arena expected. He stepped back and lowered his weapon. The combat is finished, he said clearly, his voice carrying to every corner of the arena. I claim victory, but I do not claim a life. Commander Vex's yellow eyes went wide with confusion and something that might have been fear. Not fear of death, but fear of something he could not understand. In Thrakari culture, defeated warriors died with honor or lived with shame. There was no middle ground, no mercy from the victor. Kill me, Vex whispered, his voice barely audible. Finish what you started, human. Do not leave me to live with this dishonor. Jiho looked down at the massive alien warrior with the same gentle expression he had worn throughout their encounter. That mysterious smile remained on his face, patient and understanding. There is no dishonor in being defeated by a worthy opponent, Jiho said quietly. You fought with courage and skill. Your people should be proud of you. He extended his hand toward Vex, offering to help the fallen warrior stand. Rise, Commander. Rise and stand with honor. For a long moment, Vex stared at the offered hand as if it were a poisonous snake. His entire worldview had been built on the idea that strength conquered weakness, that victory belonged to the powerful, that defeat meant shame and death. But this human had shown him something different. Jiho had won through intelligence and determination rather than brute force. He had survived what should have been impossible odds. And now, in his moment of total victory, he chose mercy over revenge. Slowly, like a mountain learning to bend, Commander Vex reached up and took Jiho's hand. The human helped pull the massive alien to his feet. The contrast between them was striking. Jiho, small and seemingly fragile, supporting the weight of a being who could have crushed him without effort. Yet everyone watching knew who had truly proven their strength. The crowd erupted into chaos. Some cheered for the incredible upset they had witnessed. Others shouted in confusion and disbelief. A few called for the combat to continue, claiming that mercy was not part of the ancient laws. But Ambassador Kalen stepped forward, raising his ceremonial staff for silence. "The trial by combat is complete," he announced in his musical voice. "The human champion has proven his worthiness through victory and honorable battle. According to the ancient laws, this settles the question of human strength." Commander Vex stood beside Jiho, his massive frame trembling slightly. The psychological foundation of his entire life had crumbled in the space of a few minutes. Everything he had believed about strength, about weakness, about the natural order of the galaxy, had been turned upside down. "I do not understand," he said, his voice hollow and confused. "You had the right to kill me. Why did you not take it?" Jiho looked up at the towering alien with compassion in his eyes. "Because true strength is not about taking life, Commander. It is about choosing when to give it back." The words hit Vex like a physical blow. He had spent his entire existence believing that power came from conquest, that respect came from fear, that victory required the destruction of one's enemies. But this small human had defeated him and then shown him kindness. Without warning, the proud Thrakari commander dropped to one knee before Jiho. The gesture sent shockwaves through the arena. A Thrakari warrior kneeling before a member of another species was unheard of in galactic history. It was a sign of absolute submission, of recognition that the other being was superior in every way that mattered. "Rise, Commander," Jiho said gently, placing a hand on Vex's armored shoulder. "We are equals now. We have tested each other and found mutual respect." But Vex remained kneeling, his yellow eyes fixed on the arena floor. "I have spent my life believing that my people were the strongest in the galaxy," he said quietly. "I thought strength meant making others fear you, but you have shown me something I never understood." He looked up at Jiho with something approaching wonder. "You are stronger than any Thrakari warrior because you choose when to use your strength. You could have humiliated me, could have taken my life, could have made me an example to others. Instead, you offered me dignity in defeat." The arena had grown quiet again as beings strained to hear the conversation between the two warriors. What they heard would be repeated in 1,000 different languages across the galaxy. "Your people are not weak," Vex continued. "They are terrifying, not because they can kill but because they can choose not to kill. Not because they can conquer but because they can choose to show mercy. Any species that can produce warriors like you deserves to walk among the stars." Jiho helped Vex stand. Once more, and this time the Thrakari commander remained upright. But something had changed in his posture, in his expression, in the way he looked at the human beside him. The two warriors walked together toward the arena exit, Vex matching his pace to Jiho's shorter steps. Behind them, the crowd continued to buzz with excitement and confusion, but neither paid attention to the noise. As they reached the tunnel leading away from the arena floor, Vex stopped and turned back toward the assembled beings. "Let it be known throughout the galaxy," he called out in a voice that carried to every corner of the arena, "that I, Commander Vex of the Thrakari Empire, have been defeated in honorable combat by Ambassador Jiho Kim of Earth. Let it also be known that in my defeat I learned what true strength means." He paused, looking directly at the section where the council members sat. "The humans are worthy to join our community. More than worthy. They may teach us all what it means to be civilized." 3 hours later, the Galactic Council voted unanimously to accept Earth's application for membership. The vote was not even close. Species that had been skeptical about human worthiness were now eager to learn from them. The warrior race that had shown mercy to their defeated enemy had earned something more valuable than fear. They had earned respect. Ambassador Jiho Kim returned to Earth as the hero who had opened the galaxy to humanity. But those who knew him best understood that he had accomplished something even more important. He had shown the galaxy that humans were not just another species seeking a place among the stars. They were something new, something that combined the warrior's strength with the diplomat's wisdom, the survivor's toughness with the civilized being's mercy. In the years that followed, whenever alien species spoke of humans, they would remember the image of a small man helping his defeated enemy stand with dignity. They would remember the smile that never wavered, even in the face of impossible odds. And they would understand that humanity had brought something precious to the galactic community. Not just another warrior race, but a species that had learned when not to fight, when to show mercy, and when to offer friendship to former enemies. The galaxy would never be quite the same.